Okay, are you ready to start on a walnut? It is walnut time. Now, I'm going to be doing this on a smaller pad that I have because um, we don't want to draw the walnut too big. Now, I don't know what size pad you may be working on, but I would keep the walnut maybe um, tops, maybe 4 to 6 inches, maybe 4 inches in length this way. And, 3 or so inches high, because the bigger you get once the shading starts going in, the bigger that walnut is. It's it's quite a job to be shading the whole thing. Um, Not that it can't be done, but it's just going to take a lot longer. Because I had one student a long time ago now, probably 15 years ago, that we were in a class of about 12 or 14 people, and she was sitting up front, and we started doing the walnut and starting with the basic shape of the um, the egg shape, pretty much, to start the walnut. And I'm looking at different students, trying to keep an eye on what's going on, and I noticed that she had this tremendous oval on her paper. It was almost watermelon size, and she had a big pad too. And it was almost watermelon size, and I commented on it, and she says, "Yeah, well, I figured I'll just do it, fairly large." I said, "Okay, it's gonna take you a little while to shade it, though." She said, "That's all right. I want to do it that way." I said, "Okay, it's it's your walnut, so go right ahead and do it." So that's what she did. She did this giant walnut, and I mean, it turned out okay in the end, but it was just a lot more work for her. So just want to show you one that I had done a long time ago. Um, See if we can get it to fit the frame here. That's basically the walnut that we're going to be doing today. Um, it's based on a drawing by a very good artist named Gene Franks. Um, I admire his work. I've used his books in class to have students get subject matter and things like that. So we're gonna use basically his walnut, and then we'll shadow it. I'm gonna just take a look here. I have a book by him, and you could see that that's the walnut there. That's the end result. That's his. We're going to do ours, so we can do it our way. All right, so the first thing, as you can see, the walnut is um, basically it's an oval shape. And now the back of the walnut protrudes a little bit more. There's the second half of the walnut. So now walnuts are very kind of bumpy, and they have like these indentations in their shell. So in his walnut, there's a couple of indentations right here, right about there. The shell itself comes about halfway there. That's where the break is between the top of the shell and the bottom of the shell. There's probably maybe an indentation there that we can work with. Um, and like I said earlier, first we get our basic shape, and then we worry about uh, refining it to what we want it to be. Okay, so that's not a bad basic shape to start with. It'll give us what we need. I can just lower that a little bit. And keep your kneaded eraser handy, because once again, it's give and take. You put some graphite in, you take some graphite out, and that's how it goes. So, where's our light going to be coming from on this walnut? It's actually going to be coming from up here. And sometimes what I always tell my students is just as a reminder of where the light's coming from, very lightly you can put an arrow there so you always see it and you say, oh, okay, that's my light source. So based on that light source, I have to look at where my shadows are going to be. So we can see that if the light's coming from the top, obviously the bottom of the shell is going to be what's in shadow. So we're gonna just adjust this line a little bit, make it. We don't want it to be too straight because the walnut shell is not really a straight thing. If you really look at a walnut, that break between the top and the bottom, it's kind of a curvy kind of line. So we're going to bring this up a little bit. We're just going to take a look at what we got going on based on our reference photo. Okay, so we've got that. Then we've got the bottom is actually pretty round. But here you could see right here, that's where the shells meet. So you want to make sure that you can see that. So now we're going to take, this is the HB, and I use the HB to do my line drawing. So now I'm going to switch to a 2B because I want to go a little deeper in where these shadows are here. I want to start indicating them, and I'm doing that as a circular motion and then easing up on the pressure so that it almost disappears. I'm going to do the same thing here. Because our light is coming in here, this is an indent in the shell. So it's going to be a little darker right here. And it might get a little lighter as it goes out this way. And sometimes if you go in a circular motion like that, and we're going to hit it with the blending stump anyway, so it's going to change it again, but you can get a nice transition in shadow. So you're going darker to lighter. And we're going to do the same thing here on this one, and we can widen that up a little bit. And don't forget that what my walnut looks like is not what your walnut's going to look like. If I have 10 people in a class and we're all doing walnuts, we have 10 different looking walnuts, but they all look like walnuts in the end, although a lot of the students say, oh, it looks like an alien. It looks like a potato, or it looks like a rock. I said, just keep working on it. Keep putting the shadow in, keep watching your reference photo, and you're going to see it's going to start really taking shape. So don't worry, it'll come around. So let's deepen this just a little bit here. Now the back of the shell is pretty much in shadow too. So we're going to put a little shadow in here. And this is just a preliminary shadow, just to get something going here. This is a little darker. There's a lot of times where the walnut breaks, or I guess it is where it comes off the walnut tree, I guess. I guess they grow on trees. I've never really seen walnuts growing. I don't know, maybe some of you have seen walnuts growing, but I really haven't. We know that they have to grow somewhere, but I don't know what they look like when they're growing. That would be kind of interesting. So now in the bottom, because the bottom is all in shadow, and we're going to leave a little bit of a light line just under our break here where the shell is. We're going to leave a little light area, because what's happening there is it's as those two shells come together, if you can picture this, see, there's a top shell and there's a bottom shell, and they come together, and right here with the light coming from the top, you see it's a little lighter, and then it goes into shadow. Well, that's what's happening with the shells, because you've got two pieces coming together. And I'm just gonna right now we're just gonna put in just some really light shadow with the blending stump, and that's what I mean when I said, if you get some graphite, some nice graphite on your blending stump, you could use it like another pencil, really, because this thing is really good like that. Not that we're not going to use our pencils, we're certainly going to do that. And with the blending we're going to do, we're going to get more graphite on the blending stump. So we're just keeping that little light line there. And just putting, you could see, just a very light shadow. I'm not really pressing too hard. Medium, I would say medium pressure right now, just to get that bottom shaded a little bit. We're going to bring a little bit more up into here. And then here where those indents are, those deeper indents in the shell, they're gonna fade out this way. If we could blend those, make them fade. That the indent it's there, and then it's really almost a hole in the shell, and then it comes out again to be just the shell. And again, you know, don't worry. If yours is not looking exactly like this, it's going to turn out to be a walnut, so don't worry. We got time to work on it. Okay. So there's a very preliminary shading. Now, let's take our 4B and see what we're going to do there with that. You know what? I'm going to take the deeper 6B, and we're going to go a little deeper right in here especially. That's where those two halves come in the back of the walnut now, where I think the walnut, as I said, is attached to the walnut tree, or whatever it's attached to. So, and then we can come a little deeper here. And this is going to stay pretty dark right in here. That's one of the darkest spots right now. So, but along here, this is going to vary. Let me grab my, I want to grab my 4B, and I want to bring a little shadowing up into here, into this area. A little, not quite as deep as the 6B yet. We're going to work on that though. See, and keep in mind as you're drawing, keep in mind the feel of a walnut. What does it feel like? I mean, we've probably all, you know, had a walnut at some point in our lives, unless you really, you know, can't have nuts. But you might have felt one. You might have had it in your hand to realize what it feels like. It's very hard. It's very bumpy. It's got cracks in it. You see deepening this? You see how it makes them look like they're going in deeper? And that's what we want. So little by little, we're building the shadow on this rough shell here that we have. Now, if we were doing another kind of nut, trying to think of which one, there is one that's fairly smooth. I don't know if it's an almond. It might be an almond. I think they're kind of rough too. Can't remember which one it is, but there's some nuts are very smooth, so they're going to have a whole different look than our walnut here. See, in some areas you get a little closer, then that light area comes back out again, and there's little areas that are raised and lowered on the shell, you know, because it's bumpy. It's got, you know, it's up and down. So it's just a matter of observing and laying in some shadows here and there. You see it start to take shape? It's kind of taking shape, yeah, it is. So now, if we take our HB, the HB is pretty good for this, or the 2B, either one. I'm going to use the HB. There's a crack in this walnut, and it runs right up along here. So you notice what I did? I came in with some pressure right here and then started easing up on the pressure and then actually lifted the pencil off the paper so that you get this really fine line right there. That's the same kind of line you use for branches if you were doing trees, like an oak tree, a maple tree, that kind of tree. You get that jagged kind of look, and then you're lifting the pencil off so that you don't wind up with this all the way out to there. You don't want it to be as intense as that, or as thick as that, as dark as that. Okay, so let's take another line, bring it up that way, and these lines can really be, anyway, walnuts have a lot of different cracks in them. Now we're going to come into the main crack between the upper shell and the lower shell, and we're going to take a look at what's going on there. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to switch pencils for that. I'm going to come in with my 4B because I do want it to be a little darker. But we're not going to do a really solid line. I'm going to put a little pressure, ease up, a little more, ease up. And that way, it doesn't look like it's too artificial. So we can put another crack up in here. I think there was one there. All right. Now, let's go back in with our 6B. Let me find it here. Okay, here we go. Now, we've got our 6B, which we can deepen this whole section over here. And what we want to emphasize is the roughness of the walnut. Keep it in mind, again, the feel of it. If you were doing a flower, you keep in mind what the petals feel like, the softness of the petals. And when you keep that in mind, it's kind of guiding your pencil as to what this is supposed to look like. So the walnut is very rough. I'm going to put a little more shadowing in here. We need more this way. And then we're going to blend this some more, so you're going to see it change even more. Go a little deeper in there. Darken those indentations that are in the shell. They're pretty deep. They're pretty deep and almost seem like holes in the shell. And you keep going and, looking at your reference photo, looking at where the shadows are. Now, because the light is coming from the top, that means our bottom of the shell, right down here, is going to be a fairly dark area. And I'm in there now with the 6B, laying in some graphite in that area. And what I'm going to do is blend it. So I want to take my trusty blending stump here and start taking some of these shadows here, blending this around, moving the graphite around. very important to do. This is an important thing, is learning the blending process. You're going to see that it makes a tremendous difference in the work that you're doing once you get the hang of it. And it takes a little while. You know, it's going to take a couple of drawings. I mean, you get pretty good at it after the walnut, but you know, as drawings get more complex, so does the blending. But that's the fun of it, where you know you're really turning out some pieces of work that are really cool. You know, people look at it and say, "Oh man, you did that. That is really neat." And that's always nice to hear. You know, when people can appreciate what you do. So you see, I'm putting all these little areas in here. Now, when you have an object that the light, a rounded object like this, where the light is coming down from the top, it's going to be really dark down here. So, and it's going to get a little darker. But what happens is the light comes down and it hits the surface that this is sitting on, and it bounces light back onto the object, and it hits right around in here, and it's called reflected light. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit, I'm going to get my kneaded eraser to the shape I need to get some light out of there, and I'm going to pull out a little bit of light in here. That's going to be our reflected light, and then we're going to go darker on the bottom. And we're going to take that 6B again, and we're going to go really dark in here, and then blend it up. So we don't want it to look like just a harsh line. When you're drawing something, you also want to remember that any object that you look at anything in your home or outside, it doesn't have an outline. So you see we've got a line here now showing the edge of the walnut, but what we have to do is we have to do something that makes that line not really be a line, disguise it, let's say. And that's important, because objects, you know, we see their edges because of light and dark, or because of color variations. You know, you see something that's dark against a light background. There's no outline on it, but you see it because of that contrast. So what we're going to do is also do the same thing, and let this fade away by having a shadow behind it, and this will be casting a shadow under it because the light is coming from the top. So we're getting our reflected light in here. Now, when you look at shadows, obviously this is going to have a shadow underneath it with the light coming from below. The shadow is important because what it does, you see our walnut right now is just floating. It's just floating in space. Now, you really don't want your walnut to do that. You want it to look like it's sitting down on something, on a surface. And what this line with our 6B again is going to do is it's going to, what we call, it's going to ground the walnut. It's going to ground it to the surface that it's sitting on. It's going to make it look like it's sitting on a surface rather than just floating in midair. So we're going to figure out, you know, where's our shadow roughly going to go? Well, we could say it's going to be about like this. And it's going to be the darkest right here. Shadows are odd little things. They're darkest next to the object that is casting the shadow. and then they fade as they move away from the shadow. So it'll be the darkest right under the walnut, and it'll fade as it goes away from the walnut. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to blend this shadow in here, and then we're going to fade it. Lighten your pressure. Just let it fade. That's another thing you'll get used to, is the variation in pressure on, not just on the pencils, but on this blending stump too, because it will, changing your pressure is going to change the look of what you've got going here. So nice and easy, see? Blend that out into the lighter area. It's darker right here, right under the walnut. It's much darker. And now, notice that the walnut isn't floating anymore. It's sitting down on a surface. That's our darkest line right there, is the grounding line. And an interesting thing, and I don't know if we could see it here or not. Let me see. If I put my pencil down here on the paper, and I don't know if that'll show up or not, but it doesn't really show. If you look at where the pencil meets the paper, there's a dark line there. That's your grounding line, and it'll show up on anything. Trying to see if I have something that'll illustrate it a little better. My pencil sharpener, let's see. If I put that down here, can you see right down in here? Might not be able to get it with the camera angle, but there's a darker line there. That's the grounding line. That's what we're doing here, is creating that grounding line. So I'm gonna go back in with the 6B, because I want to really deepen this right here and blend it out just a little bit into the shadow. But that's what gives you the illusion. Again, you're an illusionist, like I said earlier, and you're going to make people believe that this thing is really a walnut. Okay. So now we've still got the issue here of our outline, which we don't really want. So being the light is coming, we could say that the light is coming from this angle. So it's casting a shadow down, but it's also casting against the wall. It's not, I guess it's not, we're not going to consider it straight down light. We're going to consider it coming more at this angle. So because of that, we can take our 6B and run it over here. Now, this is another area where, if you've tried doing cross hatching and you like it, you like that method, here's a perfect area you can do it. Gene Franks, the original artist who did this walnut, does use cross hatching a lot in a lot of his drawings. So you can do that. I do it the other way because I just happen to like it the other way. So now where this is, kind of dark in here, we have some indentations and things. We're not gonna go quite as dark in the background. So we're gonna lessen that up where it almost actually fades out. Bring it out here a little bit, extend it out, and we're going to blend this. I am going to blend it. You may be doing the cross hatching, so your method of going from dark to light is going to be using a series of those lines like I showed you earlier. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using my blending stump, as I usually do, and get a little bit of a darker area in here. I want to show you something else too. I'll do it right over here. Can you see? I don't know if you could really see that point on that pencil, but let's say you've got a pencil, and this is your pencil, and this is your point. Now sometimes you really want a sharp point like that, but there are other times when you want it to look more like a chisel point. Like that. And that's what I've got on here now. I've got, because I've been using it, and it smooths out. If you find this edge right here on your pencil, and you turn it in your hand so that that's facing the paper, now you can get some really nice blending in there with the pencil alone. And you could actually feel how smooth the pencil is gliding over the paper because of that flat edge that's been created, that you created with the blending that you're doing. So we're going to go a little lighter as we come down. Keep it a little darker along the edge because, again, we don't want this. We don't want an outline on it. But here, you see that's darker there, so we're going to get a little lighter there. Let this show up as a dark area. We'll blend this out. You blend it out as far as you want. I mean, within reason, of course. If you come out a little bit further, I might come up a little bit here. And like I say, I'm going to come back in with my blending stump because I want to get it a little bit smoother. I like that smooth look that you can get. So we're going to do a little bit more smoothing here. We won't worry about my direction there. You could just, as you're going along, once you're this far along, you don't have to worry about where your light is. You just take that arrow off of there because you're not going to need it anymore. Okay, so let's go back in now. I'm going to go back in, do a little more blending in here, deepening some areas. And this is a judgment call on your part. You get it, to look pretty much like your reference photo, looking at your light and your shadow. That's what's really guiding you is the light and the shadow. So you get the shadows pretty much where you want them, and you deepen them where you think you need to deepen them. And sometimes it becomes kind of, after you're doing this for a while, it's kind of instinctive as to where you put shadow and how much shadow you put. You'll find that you just look at it and you say, yeah, it needs a little more there, or it needs a little more here. In the beginning, you're probably going to stick pretty close to the reference photo, and that's fine too. So you see, look at how that's changing now. See how that's smoothing itself out with the blending stump. And the good thing is it not only is it blending itself out, but it's putting more graphite on my blending stump. So my blending stump's going to be like another pencil for me, so that I can do nice shadowing just with the stump alone. You'll see that when we are going to do a sunflower, and you'll see when you do the petals that the graphite on the blending stump actually comes in really handy in doing something like that, and it gives you that nice soft look that you really want, because in a flower it's very soft. And here you could see how these shadows now have made this look pretty, bumpy and rough, which is, what a walnut looks like, what it feels like. So you want to kind of, or I try to anyway, stay fairly true to what something feels like. I keep that in my mind as I'm drawing, as to what is the texture that I'm trying to to convey here? What do I want the viewer to see as texture? Do I want it to be soft, like a flower, or do I want it to be, a little more rough, like this walnut? Or, certainly if you were doing like the side of a barn or something like that, which we'll get into at some point. Wood, stone. You don't want that to get a very soft look, because that's not really what it has. Especially if you got an old barn, you got a lot of cracks and all kinds of things going on there. There's holes and probably wormholes and God knows what. But that's what you want to convey to your viewer as to what's going on. That's important, because if it looks very artificial, it's just gonna give your drawing a whole different look. And I know it's hard to, right in the beginning, to make it look maybe the way you want it to, but as you train your eye and you train your hand to work together and get the effects that you want. Now, don't forget that we've got a blending stump, and we've got pencils, we've got all kinds of things. Your finger's a pretty good one too, to go around and smooth some of this stuff out too. Very often artists will use fingers. Why not? We had those probably long before drawing pencils were invented. But so use them, if it works for you, use them. So we're just going to put a couple little more areas in here where I feel we can show a little bit more of a roughness of the texture that's part of this this walnut. And we don't have to overdo it, we just, especially in the beginning, if you're getting something similar to this, and don't forget, as an artist, you're not always happy with the way something's coming out, no matter how long you've been drawing. It's just the way artists are. We're very critical of our own work. I know that I am. See me taking out a little bit there, just to bring that back out where the shadow was. And so with that kneaded eraser is an important tool. It really is. It becomes a very important tool. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, artists are very critical of their own work. I know I am. I've always been. You may be that way too, but don't be too hard on yourself, especially when you're just starting out, and you've got a little ways to go on your journey. You get there. You stay with it, you'll get there. It's persistence, it's practice, and it's very important. Just keep drawing. Draw things. Look at things. Look at all the different things that are out there in our world that you might say, gee, I'd kind of like to draw that. Well, the cool thing today, nowadays anyway, is that most people have a camera with them right on their phone. So we can take great reference photos and, use them to really draw some cool pieces. So I think it'd be really neat to, do that. Use your phone, use your phone to create reference photos. And then draw them. You could print them out. Now, see, I'm just coming along here. Now, like I said, everybody's walnut is going to be different. Mine's going to be different than yours. Um, if we were in a class of people together, you would see that their walnuts are different than yours, which are again different than mine. And it's okay. That's really okay. In fact, it's good. When you go into a gallery, let's say, and you look at the paintings on the wall, they're of all different subject matter, but even if they were very similar subject matter, they're all done differently. An artist sees things, every artist sees things a little differently, and that's what's going to become your style. That's how you're going to, eventually, that will be people, friends, relatives, and maybe you'll even be in a gallery someday. You never know. That's what happened to me. I started out, right where you are, and I wound up, having my work in a gallery, and people were able to recognize my style, and they knew that a drawing, a painting, whatever it happened to be at the time, they knew that I had done it because they were so used to seeing my work, and they got to recognize how I saw things and how I drew things and painted things. And that's what'll happen with you too, because you will develop that style. Takes time, takes a little time, but you'll see it slowly start to take shape. And that's the cool part when you see that. I mean, then you say, wow, I got something good going here. And you do, you really do. Okay, we're basically done with our walnut. I'm just playing a little bit more here. So, you know, walnuts, again, are all different shapes, different sizes, and this is just one example of a walnut, and hopefully you have some success with yours. See, there's that light area again between the two shell halves, and we could even bring a shadow down really tight here and keep it a little bigger lit area right in there. But you see how the shell comes down, then comes back out, and then under. So you're creating that illusion, and that's exactly excuse me, that's exactly what we want to do, is to create that illusion from looking at a reference photo and using our basic shapes, and there you go. All right, thanks for joining me. We'll be back with another lesson next time, and I think, well, I'm not sure what we're going to do. We might do a bucket, and then I think we'll do the sunflower. I'd like to get a little more practice in on the shading, and again, the basic shape with the bucket, and that might be a fun one to do. So we'll probably work on that. Okay, take care. See you then. Bye-bye.